Welcome to Digication Scholars Conversation Series. I'm your host, Joan Watson. In this episode, you'll hear part one of my conversation with Clarence Chan from LaGuardia Community College in Queens, New York. More links and information about today's conversation can be found on Digication's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Full episodes of the Digication Scholars Conversation Series can be found on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. By all accounting, Dr. Clarence Chan is a caregiver. He's a practicing physical therapist. He's a professor and director of the Physical Therapist Assistant Program at LaGuardia Community College and a martial arts instructor at the YMCA. He has recently completed a successful accreditation cycle, earning a commendation from the Commission on Accreditation in Physical Therapy Education. The use of e-portfolios features prominently in Dr. Chan's teaching, research, and publication, and in his recent accreditation success. We are so pleased to be speaking with him today. Welcome, Clarence.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Joan, and thank you for inviting me to join you with this conversation today.
We're very, very pleased to have you. Thank you so much. I know you're busy, and things get especially crowded on our schedules now that the world is inside out and upside down. So thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
We're learning education, as we know it. So.
Yes. I know people have been speaking a lot lately about building the airplane as we fly it. And I really don't like that metaphor too much because it usually has a very bad ending.
Well, we do have a few crash landing or crash and burn, depends
That's
on who we
true.
ask, right?
That's very true. Well, I'm gonna jump right in because you've had a lot of success recently, some noteworthy things that I'd like to highlight, and I do want to get through sort of the your personal connection with building portfolios, how you use it with your students, and then talk a bit about how you got to your success in the accreditation cycle. So, I read recently. That you were featured in the member spotlight for the Empire State Physical Therapy. What is the word I'm looking for? The publication. Yes, the P word. It was last year. So congratulations for that distinction.
Oh,
In that article, you share a little bit about your discovery and the exploration of the physical therapy profession as a new immigrant from Hong Kong. And I imagine that, physical therapy being sort of a newish profession at the time, or maybe not something that was heralded as a prominent profession, perhaps. But how have your experiences as sort of a discoverer or an explorer and a learner kind of contributed to your approach to teaching?
Definitely. I think the key word that you nailed it there was really about exploration and discovery, and that's, I think, it's more or less the primary guidance for both myself as a learner, and of course also professionally as a clinician, as well as then became an instructor. I think all of those are kind of intertwined. Early on, because of the transition from obviously to a new country and learning the language and learning everything about, you know, the new world. In some way, you have no choice. Either you're going to have to discover, and certainly there's a lot to explore. And through that process, I accepted the fact that learning is going to be incredibly messy and challenging, and like we said before, building the airplane. So unfortunately, yeah, everything from the Wright brothers on, there's a lot of not so comfortable landing. So. Uh,
That's right.
so definitely, that's more or less what I kind of embrace, the fact that uh, for myself as well as teaching all my students is to embrace the discomfort. That's going to be uncomfortable moment, and could be lots of it. And through that process, as long as this is something you want and it's something that's meaningful to you, then you get back up and go get some more and try it again, and until it gets a little easier. I don't think it ever going to be 100% uh, comfortable, but at least it gets a little better. Again, like you mentioned before, yeah, I am involved in martial arts for a number of years, and that certainly, getting punched in the face will always be uncomfortable. No matter, you could be the world class, you know, competitor. You still, I don't think anybody enjoy that pain. So
Yes, yes, but you keep going.
yeah,
So
yeah,
motivation is a big part
absolutely,
of this.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned early on that you're a caregiver, and I feel like, as a fellow educator, the what you just mentioned about learning being messy and challenging, but still getting back up, that's bound to resonate with your students as well, through your pedagogy and your practice in the classroom. So, could you talk a little bit, because I know that, the student body that you work with in LaGuardia is incredibly diverse and faces a lot of challenges, some of which you may have faced yourself as a young immigrant in the country.
Yeah.
Can you discuss a little bit about what your interactions are like with those students and how that impacts your teaching?
Well, in that sense, yeah, I guess it is a distinct advantage, for myself, in relation to, understanding the student a bit. I mean, certainly not totally, but uh, yes, it does give me a little bit more of an insight and understanding of what they are going through, and the kind of needs and again, that discomfort. Uh, it does help in terms of relating to them, and obviously, they know that I went through the kind of more or less the same experience with them, and yeah, I have no problem talking to them about how I struggle through, and that's what I wrote in some of the earlier work, and talk to them. For years, I walk around with a dictionary with that in my hand, because that was pre internet days, and there's no Dr. Googles, and you know everything is, you go look it up yourself. You want to find a book, you walk to the library. You do your paper, you sit in the library, go to the shelf, and pull out the book. So that's something that you can relate. And of course, I think the language part, I think you know what makes LaGuardia so unique is of course the uh, number of languages, and the people's different background and cultures, that and certainly there's no way I can relate to them all. Uh, but I think by being in a foreign land, not speaking the language, not understanding the culture, and of course deal with some of the other craziness of being, minorities, and not part of the culture. Uh, those are the things, certainly a good place to have conversation with students, and hopefully through that conversation, that can provide them some support and comfort, and ultimately I want them to know, all, not just myself but my entire faculty team are there to not just teach them, to care for them, because if you want to teach compassionate caregiver and
Mhm.
future healthcare professionals, those are the things that far beyond what the textbook can offer. And I always tell the student that if the skill and the techniques and the knowledge you can always get down the road, and you will always continue to get those. But if you start out with the compassion and the care, and that you gotta have, and that you gotta have from day one, and you can't say you do that 10 years later as you get better. No, that's the piece that I hope they all leave with.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. Bedside manner, I guess, is what we used to call it, right? Now it's just this overarching sense of empathy and ethos. How do you distill that in your students? How do you get them to connect with the concept of the ethos or the empathy?
Well, I think in some way, and certainly there's a lot of different ways to do it. One certainly is through our teaching, and I always believe, whether you're a teacher or parent or a caregiver, you got the model by example. You know,
Mhm.
you can't tell people to care if you don't. And uh, also, I think in terms of the teaching part of it, we understand, of course, learning domain, the psychomotors, we can teach them. The cognitive level, you can read the book, you can continue to study, give them a million exams. Uh, it's the affective aspect, and I think that's uh, whether people call it soft skill or people skill, some of that again, you got to one, you just need to exemplify the best that you
Mhm.
could, and at the same time acknowledging the individual differences. But also, I think that's where portfolio also comes in.
Good.
To give student another option, another platform to again, either whether it's self-discovery or self-expression.
Mhm.
If nothing else, it just helped them realize that it's not all just about reading a textbook or memorizing for an exam or even mastering a manual skill. It's about relating to people, communicating with people in various different ways, which again ties into our general education competency for the college, in terms of elevating the communication ability in various ways, whether it's written and oral communication, and of course, portfolio also provide that digital aspect of communication.
Yes, I agree. I agree. You had shared a can we put up Willie's portfolio?
Mhm.
Um this student portfolio really exemplifies that too, which you were just talking about, the ability to sort of kind of construct an identity, but to sort of share more than just what you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, is this a student that has been through your courses?
Yes, he graduated already. I think, he graduated last year, and he came to us already with a world of, backgrounds and experience. I mean, he's in the militaries, and uh, he expressed a little bit about his learning process and his education and aspiration. And I think as we know that you're never gonna know 100% about all the student as much as we try to. Some will let you in a little more than others.
Mhm,
And then same way, I think the portfolio, uh, again, provide another alternative, if you will. Um,
mhm.
they sometimes share more, and of course, there will be student who still gonna keep everything close to the vest, and then you ask them to put on 5 things, and they give you 4.5.
Yeah, right, exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
Um, I do feel like you're absolutely right, hitting that kind of space, and sometimes, literary theorists especially will refer to spaces like ePortfolio as a third space to sort of break down that, what you're learning and what's expected of you versus sort of that private internalized part of you, and it gives you a place to sort of integrate those 2. Um, and I notice even on your professional portfolio that you do some of that yourself. So to what extent then? So you have wonderful experiences of sort of discovery, and um, you allow that in your students too. How does reflection and reflective practice fit in not only with the profession of physical therapy and health and wellness caregiving, but also with learning and growth among your students?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the key word, right? Reflections. Which is funny. We actually had uh, certainly one of my mentor, but also a longtime faculty with our program. And every time she hear the word reflection, she cringe. She said, "Oh, I can't stand that word." It seems to be such a cliche or overused, and
Mhm.
can be overinterpreted in various way, and because it can be so many things, and then lack of a better word, I guess it can be a bit dirty word, depends on how it's being viewed even. So for
Right.
her, certainly it was interesting that angle to look at. But we understand, of course, the value of it. It's whether you use that one word or not. It is about uh, learning about yourself, and again go back to that self discovery, and exploring
Mhm.
everything around us as well as inside of us. And you can't really do that without turning inward and reflect on your experience. So, uh, the the portfolio allows that. I mean, I can't say that it's always successful, just like
Mhm.
any
Sure.
technology or platform or even the oldest tool that we can find. It's not, nothing is 100%. There will be people who embrace it and take full advantage of it, and then others, once again, they just do what they were told, and because that's part of, part of the process. But for the field, like Willie, he's able to understand the value of it and
Mhm.
kind of took a liking in developing it, whereas others are less so. So,
Yeah.
all we can do as an educator, I think, is to provide the opportunity and you know give them the tools and the space and the support, and
Mhm.
you can lead them to the water, and that's all you
That's
can.
true.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Yes. In a recent article that you did with some colleagues in Madrid, you all talk about service learning and e-portfolios. And I see a really great opportunity too when we talk about reflection, whether it's a good
Mhm,
word or a bad word. I know
mhm,
people shy away because it can be squishy
mhm,
and it
mhm,
seems sometimes superficial. That's why I always try to do the
mhm,
um, reflective practitioner sort of thing. So you're thoughtful about the work that you're doing, particularly when there are sort of the affective domains involved.
mhm.
But with the service learning component, can you talk a little bit about that as part of your curriculum and then how you use portfolios to get students to engage with that beyond the actual experience itself?
Yes, that's where we find, right now we have the most sustained and ongoing engagement with all of our
Mhm,
students through the portfolio. One is being that portfolio is a required element, as part of our program. So,
mhm,
obviously, every student involved and built the portfolio from start to finish until, beyond graduation. We always tell them it's really your own identity. Treat it as if it's your own website, and go as far as you want with it. Do as much or as little with it, and always emphasize that and want to make sure that it stay that way, is that it is student owned and it's student driven, as much as, unfortunately they do view it as sometimes it is a little bit top down because it's a programmatic mandate. But kind of that juggling act that we're trying to, try to strike that balance. But in terms of how it support surface learning for us, of course, is through their clinical education phase, which is the clinical, where they uh, out in the clinical world, no longer, coming on campus on a regular basis. So we know that, without a way of connecting with the student on an ongoing basis, and also in some way encourage them or prompt them, or if you some say we force them to uh, have to think
Maybe that's
about that.
okay, right?
Yeah, yeah, to think about that, their clinical experience. What have you learned today? What was the experience like? Working in pediatric center for the first time, or seeing someone, pass away, right in front of your eye when you're in the acute hospital in the ICU.
Yeah.
So I think all of those experience sometimes get lost and get buried unless you at least again encourage them to put it on words and lay it out and share with people. And we do bring students in, of course, pre-COVID days that we weekly bring students back in the evening for a one night a week seminar to have a little bit of a sort of a powwow to share those experience and wipe each other's tear kind of thing, or clap each other's hand.
Yeah.
But, portfolio is another way so that we don't have to wait until, that one day a week, it's another space. So we do create a space, and of course create another tab that's saying, uh,
Sure, yeah.
here you go. This is your clinical experience. And because we have several rotations before they graduate, so we do break that down into different sections. And hopefully, again, as part of the feature of the portfolio, it's to allow them to chronicle and uh, look across their, you know, studies and experience across time, so they can see that, oh wow, what I'm experiencing right now in my final rotation is actually different than what I wrote, 6 months ago, even when I had my first time, putting a baby in my hand, kind of thing. So,
Right, right.
so that's where I think the value of having a platform like the portfolio, and certainly not saying that's the only vehicle that we can do that, but certainly it's just one of a logical place to be, from an education angle.
Yes, and it is nice that it belongs to the student too, because over time they're likely to forget some of those experiences as they go about. So, in their own discovery journey, right, of their career, it's really nice to have that. I love what you said. Your prompt students in their portfolios as a place where you ask them what they've learned. So, what have you learned? Which I think is a great, with all due respect to your colleague, a great reflection question, right? Such as I learned
Yeah.
how to bend an elbow a certain way, but I also learned that, maybe I shouldn't be working in an ICU environment, or maybe I really truly enjoy working with geriatric patients. So this type of communication, I think you're absolutely right, is completely valuable. Um, the world has gone a little bit crazy right now, so we have different challenges when it comes to meeting with students face to face, and that powwow ability that maybe you used to have on a weekly basis. I'm not sure where LaGuardia stands these days with face-to-face meetings, but has the role of portfolio changed since your instructional landscape has changed a little
Um,
bit?
well, I mean, it's constantly evolving. I mean, my
Mhm.
program has been involved with portfolio for more than a decade. So that's certainly gone through a lot of changes, and as the platform have it changed and improved through the years, and the flexibility and the features that added to what we can do, but present this challenge as well, but at the same time does give people opportunity to explore further. And certainly gave me a lot of opportunity to say, hey, what else can we do? And what would we like to change? And that's like most things, like my colleague always complain about me being, I can't stay still. Every semester I'm changing something, and just when you thought you arrive, okay, time to get up and go to another place, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So that that evolution is constant. So same thing, and it's almost like we never comfortable and never happy with what
Mhm.
we got. So in that sense,
Right.
I guess it can be problematic. But of course, then come 6 months ago, when the world kind of went upside down. Uh, the good part of it is we already have the portfolio structure, and
Mhm.
it's been in
That's
place,
right.
and we've been using it, so there's really no need to change anything in that regard. Since
Mhm.
all the student have it, all the student continue to use it. In fact, for the past 6 months, I would say that we were able to, you know, even expand on the utilization, and we, not totally relied on it, but certainly since we're all relying on technology right now, uh,
Yeah.
portfolio is just another piece, and like again, any part of technology, none of them singularly is a panacea, to solve all, world problem, but at least it's another place, whether it's just simply as a vehicle for, again, whether it's just simply presenting the artifacts and storing materials and sharing and communicating assignments. So all of those are being utilized. I mean, in fact, in the spring when I had my course first, you know, that sort of within 3 days you got to totally convert to distant learning. Uh,
Right. Yeah.
you have to be really creative and nimble in making that switch. For us, one of the biggest challenge, in as you can imagine, in the nature of physical therapy practice, is that face-to-face interaction, that manual intervention of actually hands-on, which of course totally lost, and it just, no matter how many video you show and how many, uh, you know, case studies or simulation, and none of those can replace the real thing. So I'm not saying portfolio can do any better, but what it does is at least whatever the students are learning and doing, um, again, they can also capture some of those experience and put it in their portfolio. So what I did is actually, since we can't do on campus practical exam, I basically have them just practice, video it on their own, and capture the movement, the process, and the intervention itself. Some of them was able to have a family member to do it. Others creative in making some pretty interesting mannequins and dummies that they can practice everything from how you listen to heart sound and how do you perform respiratory drainage or wound care is pretty interesting.
Oh,
How do you fix a wound and actually dress it? And so things like that, they all uh, have to create videos and submit it. And of course, naturally, as they put it in your portfolio, I know where to find it.
mhm.
Have it there. That's
Wonderful.
yours. That's part of this course experience. Now you can showcase it to people, and I can give you a grade. So
That's great.
I think, actually, I think all of our faculties, in one way or another, utilize some element of that. And certainly, again, even prior COVID, all of their learning experience, minus the exams, are captured in the portfolio anyway. So,
That's excellent. Yeah. I imagine as a result, there are a lot of family members and family pets who are in really good physical shape right now.
I hope so.
They've been they've been properly manipulated and they feel really good,
Or
right?
the joint gotten looser than they have life. Yeah.
Or that's right. Well, we'll just hope for the best part of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that's terrific, and so I imagine that you're seeing some pretty rich portfolios now that, and you're getting to see the extent of your students' creativity as
If
they
nothing
find
else,
their
I get to see a lot of kitchens.
There you go. Well,
This concludes part one of our conversation with Clarence Chan from LaGuardia Community College. To hear part two, be sure to subscribe to Digication Scholars Conversations on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. The Digication Scholars Conversation Series is brought to you by Digication, a technology platform powering the most innovative e-portfolio programs in K-12 and higher education. Our website can be found at digication.com. This episode was produced by Drew Albanesius. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thanks for watching.